real. I am so terrified. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you want to watch this later, you can always come back to my channel and watch it again. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about I'm actually using the front camera so I can see myself and be sure that I'm within frame. So if you find me looking elsewhere, I'm just looking at myself to be sure that I'm within frame. I also want to apologize for the background noise. You could hear anything at this point because yeah. So today we're going to be talking about sewing tips for beginners. This is my first live video, by the way, guys, so just pardon me. Everything is weird at the moment, so yeah. So I'm going to be looking at my tablet because that's where I have all the tips that I actually want to. Thank you, Robinson. So yeah, I'm going to be looking at my tablet just to go through the tips that I'll be discussing with you today. So first of all, my name is Silem. Okay, some of you already know this, but if you're new to my channel, then my name is Silem. Today we're going to be talking about sewing tips for beginners. So I've been sewing for a total of 5 years now, and in all that time I have been able to learn a lot about sewing and a lot about all that has to do with sewing and all of that. And in the process, I've also gotten to be creative to the point where I can actually sew. Hi, I didn't get your name, but hi. I've gotten to the point where I've been so creative to make outfits without sewing, and that's one of the things that is important to me on this channel, because I've decided because I make videos where I teach you guys how to make outfits without sewing. Actually, that is the reason why I'm late to this particular live stream. This was supposed to start airing by 2 o'clock, but it's 2:30 already, so I'm so sorry I'm 30 minutes late. I was actually recording a no-sew video for you guys, and that video will go up next week, Saturday. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into the tips that we'll be talking about today. So the first tip, I'm going to give you a total of 8 tips, and then I'm going to answer any questions you have, if any. So the first tip is, so obviously this is for beginners, but if you're not a beginner, if you've already started sewing, you're an expert or intermediate, you're on the intermediate level, it doesn't matter what level you are, this video is for you. Okay, so whatever level you find yourself in, these tips will actually be helpful. So the first tip I'll give, hi Afam. Hi Afam. Thanks for tuning in, Afam. So the first tip I'll say is a question. Actually, it's more of a question than a tip. It is, do you really want to learn how to sew? Do you really want to learn how to sew? It's a valid question, right? It's a valid question. Now, me on the other hand, I've always had a sewing machine within reach. There's always been a sewing machine in my house, but I had to. Sorry guys, the network is just, that was scary. The network is just terrible today. So like I was saying, the first tip is, do you really want to learn how to sew? It's a valid question because, like I said, I've been exposed to, I've always had a sewing machine within reach, but I had to tell myself that, listen girl, you have to learn how to sew, like, consciously. Do you get? Hi Chiwendu. That's my brother. Yeah. So do you really want to learn how to sew? That's the first tip. I keep going over this tip over again, but let me say something. It's one thing to do something because everyone else is doing it. It's another thing to do something because you actually have passion for it, Okay, so even if you don't want to learn how to sew per se, or even if you've never been the fashionista person, you might actually have that flair or that passion for sewing. So it's something you have to sit down and ask yourself, do I want to learn how to sew? Or is it just because everybody else is sewing? Do I want to sew because everybody is sewing? Do you get? So that's the first thing you should ask yourself. So before you go spending money paying for a fashion course or paying to go to fashion school or paying someone to teach you how to sew, before you do all of that, ask yourself, do I really want to learn how to sew? Is this something that I'm passionate about? Now, sewing is not easy, but I would say that there's nothing that's easy. Nothing good comes easy, they say. But sewing is complex in a way. And so if you don't have the passion for it, when you get really confused, when you get, when something is difficult for you, you probably give up because you don't actually have the passion for it. Do you understand? So that's the first tip I'll give for beginners. You have to ask yourself if it's something you're passionate about, if it's something you actually want to do. You don't have to do it commercially, you don't have to sew for people, but if it's something you just want to learn because you have passion for it, then it's worth asking yourself. So ask yourself, do I actually want to learn how to sew? So once you've answered that question, I'm hoping that the answer is a yes. We move on to the second tip, and the second tip is basically I'm going to expose you to the options you have to learn how to sew. Now there are a lot of options out there, but which of them is going to be the best for you? So we're going to talk about the pros and the cons of each of these options that are available to you. So the first thing we would say is the first option you have is going to school, like going to the university to actually learn fashion, right? Now that is something that, for me personally, I feel like that is the best way to learn how to sew, because you're going to get like a holistic view of fashion. It's not, you're not going to learn only sewing. You're going to learn merchandising, you're going to learn illustration, you're going to learn a bit of fashion business, right? So you're going to actually learn pattern drafting, you're going to learn the actual sewing. So it's packed with everything in it, because you're going to be doing it for 4 years. So that's like a bachelor's degree in fashion. Now for me, that is the most ideal way to learn how to sew, because sewing would just be a tip of the iceberg of what you're going to actually get when you actually, you know, use the fashion. Yes, I want to believe. I haven't done any proper research on that. Thank you, Afam. So Afam asked, do these fashion-centric universities exist in Nigeria? I want to believe they do. I really hope they do, because I've only checked for universities outside Nigeria. Obviously, you'd have universities that you can learn fashion design outside of Nigeria. I've checked that. I know a couple of universities outside Nigeria that actually you can learn fashion there. But for Nigeria, I don't know if fashion is available in any university. But I'm definitely going to check, and I'll let you guys know in some way. Maybe in my next video, I'm going to insert that, like the answer to that question. I'm actually going to do proper research to check cities if we have fashion design as a proper course, right? So when I thought about that particular tip, I was thinking of universities outside Nigeria. Now that brings me to the con. Thank you, Afam. But that brings me to the con. So we've talked about the pro of learning fashion design in a university as a proper course. The pro of that is that you're going to learn it holistically. You're not only going to talk about... Okay, so Robinson, my boo. So my brother just said that Uniben offers fashion design as a sub. So that's a good thing. So you guys, there it is. Uniben actually offers fashion design as a sub under home economics. So you see, that's actually a good thing. Yeah, but I'm just thinking of if we have any... Thank you, Robinson. I'm just thinking if we have any like proper fashion design course in any university. So I'm going to check that and I'll let you guys know, okay? I might put it on my community tab, or I'm going to put it as a post on one of my videos, okay? So that's the pro of learning fashion design as a course. You're going to have like a holistic view of what fashion design is. Now, on the other hand, the con of learning fashion design in a school is, first of all, it's expensive, right? it's expensive. You're going to be paying full tuition for 4 years or 3 years, depending on where you're studying. 3 to 4 years, you're going to be learning fashion design. Yes, you're going to be getting in-depth knowledge, experience, and all of that while studying, but it's quite expensive. We have to be honest, it's quite expensive. And now when we have YouTube and all these other avenues that we can actually learn some of these other aspects of fashion, I don't know if it's the best decision. It actually depends on you and what your budget is like, and you know where you are at in your life at the moment. So it's something you have to decide on your own. You have to weigh the pros and the cons and decide whether it's something you want to invest in, because it's actually a very serious investment. So that's one of the cons of studying fashion design in a university. You are going to have to pay your money, right? Because you're going to get a bachelor's degree in that. You could also, without doing if you don't want to get a bachelor's degree in fashion design, you can actually get a diploma in fashion design. That's actually a less expensive option, and it's also as good. It's not as good as like the 4 or 3 years bachelor's, obviously, but it's pretty good. It's good enough. Okay, so that's another option. You can do it for like a diploma, a higher national diploma or a national diploma, whatever it is, and depending on what's available in the university that, or the polytechnic or the college that you want to do the course in. So that is a con. One con is that it is very expensive, but if you opt for the diploma version of it, you can get it to be, you know, more budget friendly. So that's that for the fashion school, or studying it as a degree, or getting a degree in fashion design. Another option you can actually look at is a fashion course. Now, what I said the first time was a fashion course in a university or polytechnic or a college, a fashion course, right? Now, you can actually go to a fashion academy where all they do is teach people how to sew, how to cut, how to do pattern drafting, how to, you know, basically they teach you fashion, but it's not as formal as a university or as a polytechnic or as a college. It's not as formal as that, right? So that is another option. So you could go to a fashion academy. Again, it depends on the budget you have, but you can go to a fashion academy and you can actually find out how much it takes and how long it takes. I believe to properly learn sewing, just sewing, not fashion drafting, not pattern drafting, not cutting. Okay, yeah, cutting goes along with sewing. So to actually learn cutting and sewing, the minimum I would advise is 6 months. I know some people might be very, very, very smart and very intelligent, and they could pick things like this and they could learn sewing and cutting in 3 months. I've had a student that learned cutting and sewing in 3 months, and now she's sewing for clients. She has her own clients. So I understand that some people are actually very, you know, intelligent and very fast at grabbing things, but some people need to take time to process these things, okay? So the minimum, I'll say, whatever option you decide to use to learn how to sew, the minimum I would say, so you don't have to hurry yourself, you don't have to rush, you don't have to, you know, be in a hurry to learn something or grab something before the time you have to stay there expires or something. Do you get? So so you could go to a fashion academy. You could go there and find out how much it takes to do like a 6 months program, and you tell them what it is you want to learn. Most of these fashion academies, they actually have a schedule or an outline or a course outline where they tell you the possible things that you would learn within the time frame that you want to learn. And obviously the time frame you're looking at will also depend on, you know, the time frame you're going to learn is going to depend on, you know, how much you're paying, what the course outline is like, and all of that. So that's one good option. Now, the pro of learning a fashion academy, in my opinion, is you're going to have other people that are going to be learning alongside with you, all right? That's one pro. Another pro is that you're going to be having different people coming to teach you, right? So different people will come in and teach you and say, okay, one person might teach you how to cut. The next person might teach you how to actually join the fabrics together in the best way possible. The next person might teach you how to do pattern drafting. Okay, so people will teach you different things. So you have options. So if you're finding something difficult, you could go to that particular teacher that taught you that, and you can actually, like, you know, say, okay, I didn't really understand what you taught the last time, and I want clarity on that. And because it's more than one teacher, I'm not going to overemphasize the importance of having more than one teacher teaching you something that is as broad as fashion, right? So the fact that you have a lot of teachers, you're not overwhelming one person by all your many questions. So you're going to ask the question that's relevant to the particular teacher's field, right? So if you have a teacher that's teaching you cutting, you're going to ask your cutting related questions to that teacher. If you have a teacher that's teaching you sewing, you're going to ask sewing related questions to that teacher. But then again, cutting and sewing is intertwined. So let's move on to maybe pattern drafting now. If you're going to have a question about pattern drafting, you have a teacher that will teach you that, and then you actually go ask that teacher, you know, about that. So that's a pro of learning in a fashion academy, and that is also a pro of learning fashion in a university or a polytechnic or a college, which is the first option that I gave you. That is also a pro. You're going to have teachers, different teachers that you can meet them and ask them, okay, different questions that you have. And also you're going to have colleagues that are going to be in the same level with you, and you guys are all going to be learning together. So you can also learn from each other as well as from your teachers, right? So that is a pro of learning fashion or learning how to sew in a fashion academy. Now the con is that it could get expensive. It's a fashion academy. You know, it gets expensive, okay? So if your budget is not up to that, then that option might not be for you, because I'm a believer in the fact that you have to cut your coat according to your size. Literally. We're talking about fashion and coats. Yeah, you could cut a coat. So literally, cut your coat according to your size, and figuratively, cut your coats according to your size, okay? So yeah, it's important that as much as you want to learn this valuable skill, you don't go bankrupt, you don't borrow, you don't run in debt. Obviously. Yeah, so I'm not going to leave you guys, don't worry. So it's important that you don't, you know, run into debt or anything like that just because you want to learn how to sew. And because it is not a get rich quick scheme, you're not going to like learn how to sew today and you're going to have like the president of the United States wife. You're not going to have like the wife of the president coming to sew and then giving you billions of dollars or millions of dollars. So it's not a get rich quick scheme. That is why you don't have to go broke just because you want to learn how to sew. So it still falls down to your budget and what you can actually afford. So basically I'm giving you the options you have, and if you can afford it, go straight and do it as a degree. If you have the time and you have the money for it, you can do it as a degree. Otherwise, you can do it as a course in a fashion academy. So that's the second point. Now the third point, or the third option you have, is being an apprentice. Now this is very popular in Nigeria. That was the way I learned. I'm not even going to lie. I was an apprentice for a couple of months, and then I started sewing on my own. So you have to work for someone, work in quotes. So when I say being an apprentice, you're going to go on errands. There's nothing wrong with your madam at work sending you on errands. There's nothing wrong with the person teaching you, maybe one of the workers sending you on errands. It's not a bad thing. It's all part of the learning process. You have to be humble so you can learn from these people. And if they ask you to do something for them, then you have to be ready to do it. Now that's the way I learned. So in this particular way of learning how to sew, you're going to be learning on the job. Now, when you learn fashion in a university or a polytechnic or a college, or you learn it in a fashion academy, there's going to be a chalkboard or a blackboard, or whatever you call it, a board marker. A board. You're going to have a board where someone will come and then write, like theoretically you'd see, they probably draw something on the board, explain to you and all of that. Now that is great, and that is such an amazing way to learn because it's theory and then you have the option to practice. Now that is for fashion design, that's for fashion design in the university, polytechnic, college or academy. Yeah, so in being an apprentice, you might not have a blackboard where someone comes and tells you this is what you do, this is what you do on a board. You have to be quick, you have to learn on the job. So as much as you're not going to have all of that theoretical knowledge, you're going to have the theoretical knowledge if you do your research and all of that, but that particular way of learning is more practically based as opposed to theoretically based. Okay, so there's not much pen and paper, write this, write that. It's more of you watching and learning on the job. Now in my case, I learn better when I write and when I read. I learn very well when I write and read. So even when I'm looking at them cutting or sewing, I had to go write because that's how I learn. I learn by writing. So if you're like me, you would need that theoretical aspect of it. And the way I was able to improvise, like I said, there was no chalk and board and marker or anything like that. So I had to improvise by getting the notebook and writing. I would write the weirdest things. I would jot down the weirdest things. You'll be surprised if you see that note. The weirdest things, I would draw the weirdest things. Like if they're cutting like a princess dart top, I'll literally draw the princess dart, like the way it looks when they are done cutting. Do you get? So yeah, that option doesn't give you so much of the theory, but believe me, sewing is a practical thing. You cannot write and tell your client that this is your dress and then you write the dress. No, you're going to have to sew it practically and give your clients an actual dress. Do you get? So it's not about, so as much as the theoretical part is important, the practical part of sewing is the crux of sewing, or the crux of learning how to sew. You need to know the practical aspect. So it's very, very important. And that is why the option to learn as an apprentice is quite advisable. I would advise you to take any of these options depending on what your budget is like, what your availability is like, and how you have known yourself to learn. So the way you know you learn easily, that you look for the option that caters to that particular way. You know that you know how to learn. You know that you know. Yeah, you know that you know. So yeah, that apprenticeship option, right, is quite practical, like I mentioned, and you're going to be learning on the job. So a tip I would give to beginners that are learning as an apprentice is that you have to start and end with a person. Now it's very easy to get carried away when you're looking at like 3 or 4 people sewing different things. This person might be sewing a dress, this person might be sewing a top, the next person might be sewing a jacket, the next person might be sewing a skirt. Now it's very easy to get carried away and look at the jacket, look at the process, and then turn and look at the skirt, look at the process. Now, one tip I'll give to you that is very important. The tip I'll give you is focus on one person at a time. It is very easy to get distracted. So focus on one person at a time. So if this person is sewing a jacket and you want to learn how to sew that jacket, first of all, ask them, what are you sewing? They tell you they're sewing a jacket. Write that down. What kind of jacket? Is it a blazer? Is it a waterfall jacket? What kind of jacket is it? They should tell you what kind of jacket it is. If they don't know the name of the jacket they're making, it's possible that they wouldn't know. If they don't know the name of the jacket they're making, then tell them to show you a picture. There should be something you could see to say, okay, this is what I am trying to achieve. This is what we are trying to achieve for today. Do you understand? So they have to show you what they are trying to make. Do you understand? Either a picture, or they should sketch it for you if they don't know how to, if they can't explain the name for you, explain the style for you, they should sketch it for you. So you have something in your mind that this is what you're going to make. Now, once you've gotten that out of the way, now you have to follow the cutting process. That is the first step. Now, my next point is going to be freehand versus pattern drafting, but I'm going to chip in a bit of that in this point. Now, ask them, are you going to use a pattern to cut this jacket? Or are you going to use freehand? What method of cutting do you want to employ? So when they tell you that it's pattern drafting they want to use to, cut that jacket. That's fine. Now, you have to write that down. Now, you have to follow the process from the cutting of the actual bodice of the jacket to maybe from the front parts, you watch them cut the front parts. You watch them cut the the back parts. You watch them cut the sleeve. You watch them cut the collar. Watch them cut everything, and all through the process, try to make sure that you're understanding every process. Now, once you get lost in any of this process, it might take a while for them to explain it in a way that you would understand. So try to follow the process step by step, okay? So try to follow the process step by step. It's very important that you follow the process step by step. So once you've gone through the whole cutting process with them, if you can sketch like each section, maybe if they've cut the front part, you want to sketch that, you can sketch that and draw it. Like, what am I saying? You can sketch that, and then when they cut maybe the front part, you sketch it down. They cut the back, you sketch it. So try as much as possible to write and draw. Those are the two things that helped me. I don't know how you learn, but that's how I was able to learn how to sew. So I did a lot of sketches, a lot of writing. That way, when I tried to practice it by myself, it was easy for me to, take my book and say, okay, I want to make this thing. First of all, I had written the name of what I wanted to make. I already had a picture because they showed me a picture. And then I had followed the cutting process. And so I was able to cut that same thing. I was able to replicate the same thing that I was taught. Do you understand? Now, the next thing you have to do is follow up after the cutting process. Follow up with the rest of the sewing. Okay? You can't just cut and not do anything about it. When you cut, you have to sew it. Okay? So you have to follow them throughout the sewing process. Okay? That is very, very important. To start with a person, so a particular worker that is making a particular clothing item, start with them and finish with them. Be sure that you are there till the clothes is ready, or till the dress is ready, or till the jacket is ready. Be sure you are ready you are there from the beginning when they pick the fabric, bring the fabric out, and they say this is what they want to make. Be sure that you are there with them when they cut it, when they sew it, and when they finish it. If you can even be there when the client comes for fitting, that would be amazing, because when the client comes for fitting, if there's any adjustment that needs to be done or alteration that needs to be done, you'll be there to see that, okay, this is the sewing process, and this is the adjustment that needed to be done. So you can learn from, the whole process. So it's like a holistic way of learning in that way, as opposed to looking at someone that's cutting the jackets, following them down to the cutting process, leaving that person alone, and then jumping to the next person that's making a skirt and following the person. That way you have bits and pieces of knowledge everywhere, but you wouldn't have anything holistic. You wouldn't have anything total. You wouldn't have anything that is worth anything, really. You just have bits and pieces everywhere, and that's not good enough. So that is one of the tips I would give anyone that's learning as an apprentice. And so the pro of learning as an apprentice is that you're going to be learning on the job, which to me is quite valuable than writing and writing and writing and writing and writing when you don't understand it. It's good to write, it's good to theoretically assimilate what you're being taught, but then again, it's more important, especially in sewing, to practice what you actually learned. Okay? So that is important. Now, moving on to the next option you have. The next option you have is online classes, okay? Oh, sorry, before we move on to online classes, let me just talk about the con of learning as an apprentice. Now, the con of learning as an apprentice is that you might not be taught in the best theoretical way, right? So both theory and practical is important. And so in learning as an apprentice, you might not be taught theoretically, you might not be taught Jay. Okay, welcome Jay, good to see you. So in learning as an apprentice, you might not be taught, that's a corner actually, you might not be taught in the best theoretical way. So they might not actually have a blackboard and a pen and a marker to teach you, but you're going to learn something if you're actually very attentive to what is actually being done. which is the actual practical work. Now, the next option you can learn how to sew is online classes. Okay, you can learn online, right? So you can enroll on a course online, and you can have maybe via video calls or maybe videos. They could send you videos. Whatever the case is, you could actually learn online. Now, what I would say is learning online as a beginner might be a bit tricky. If you have a bit of knowledge of sewing, maybe if you know how to use a sewing machine, you know how to sew straight lines, you know how to sew curves. If you can do that, then learning how to sew online might actually work for you. Actually, it might work for you. But it's actually good to learn online if you have at least some knowledge of sewing or some knowledge of fashion. But if you have zero idea about sewing, nothing at all, you can still learn how to sew, but you have to be 10 times more attentive. You have to practice at home. You have to you're going to be watching a lot of videos, okay? Because this is online. You're going to be watching a lot of videos. So you have to be ready to replicate what you are watching. You can't just watch these videos and then go to bed. You have to watch these videos and then try to actually get your fabric and actually do what you actually watched. Like practice what you actually watched or practice what you learned. And that is the only way you can really, really learn online, right? That is one way you can learn online. And believe me, you have to work twice as hard to actually learn how to sew from scratch. You have to work twice as hard as someone that actually went to learn how to sew as an apprentice, or someone that did it as a degree in the university, or someone that went to a fashion academy. As an online student, you have to work twice as hard. That is the only con in learning how to sew online. But the pro is that you're going to work harder, and it's good to work harder, right? So that's the pro of learning online. And if you have a good teacher and you have good videos to work with, you can actually do very well as an online student. So yeah, that is that for the options you have. So we're going to move on to the next tip, right? The next tip is understanding measurements, both of your individual that you're trying to make for. So if it's yourself, you have to understand your measurements. And apart from understanding the measurements that you have to understand your measuring tape. If you want me to make a video, like a detailed video on this point, I'll be glad to. But you have to understand your measurements. So the clients you're making a dress for example, you have to understand what their measurements is like. What kind of body shape do they have? Let's start from there. Do they have the hourglass shape? Do they have the pear shape? Or do they have the apple shape? What kind of shape do they have? Okay, so Jay is saying he needs an online class. Okay, great. Okay, Jay, I'll do something for you, like a little online class for you. Just contact me and we'll work something out. Okay, so sorry guys. You have to understand your measurements. That's very important. So the shape the person you're sewing for, what kind of shape do they have, right? Hourglass, apple, pear. What kind of shape do they have? Are they straight? That actually matters, because the finished look or the finished outfit that you're going to make, it's important that it actually fits. If it doesn't fit, then it's a case of what I ordered versus what I got. You guys know what the whole what I ordered versus what I got thing is trending. You know that's trending and all of that. And you don't want to be a victim of what I ordered versus what I got. So it's important that you understand the measurements of your clients. Now, for example, I'll give you an example. You want to make a princess dot breast cup blouse for a client, right? Now, you've taken their measurements. You've taken their bust point, you've taken their under bust measurements. You've taken their bust measurements. So you took your tape around their bust and you took that measurement. Now, that is one thing. Now, a person's bust measurement, which is taking the tape around their bust, a person's bust measurement is not just a bust measurement. There are a lot of things involved in getting that perfect princess cup blouse for the person. Now, a person could be fat, like big, have a lot of flesh, right? A person could be busty, but they actually have small boobs. it happens. Like I've seen clients that are big, but they have small boobs. So their body, their bust is big, but they actually have small boobs. On the other hand, I've seen clients that have big boobs, but they are actually not, like their body, the rest of their body is not like big. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but what I'm trying to say is that when you see a client and you're taking their measurements, you can't just depend on only those things, those numbers you're writing down. You have to actually be attentive about the kind of body they have. A client could have hips, but they might not have like big ass. Do you understand? So it varies in a lot of ways, and it's important that you are attentive to the client you have. So if you're trying to make something for yourself, look at your body in the mirror. Trying to see the kind of shape you have, the kind of body you have. So when you're making the outfits, it's easier for you to translate that measurement you've taken into the actual outfits you're making. I hope that makes sense. I'll happily do a video, like a detailed video on this point, because it's very, very broad. It's very, very important as well. So I can actually do a video on that if you'd like. Now the next step is freehand versus pattern drafting. Okay, now this point is a very juicy one, because now different places that you would like to learn, different places that you would want to go to learn how to sew, have different methods of cutting. I mentioned this earlier in an earlier point. So you have the option of either learning how to sew or learning how to cut, in this case by freehand, or you could learn by pattern drafting. Now pattern drafting, I'm going to explain what these two things are before we move forward. Pattern drafting is actually taking detailed, precise measurements of every aspect of what you're cutting. Now these patterns, right, are things that you could actually use standard patterns. Like what I mean by standard patterns is that you can actually go online. You want to make, for example, you want to make like a top, right? You could go online, you know the kind of top you want to make. You could go online, for example, a peplum top. You want to make a peplum top. You could go on Google, right? As long as it's free, don't try not to get like copyrighted material or anything. But as long as it's free, you could get a pattern of a peplum top. Now, when you download this pattern, right, you could take the pattern out, print it out. You could download it, print it out. Now, take those pieces of paper that you get. You could place it on your fabric and actually cut out the shape, the outline of the pattern that you have, right? Now, these patterns, they come in different sizes. For example, I'm a size 10. Now, you could get a pattern for a peplum top for a size 10. You could get for a size 12, for a size 16, whatever size you are. You can literally go online. Some fashion designers actually make patterns and sell. I'm going to be doing that soon, so stay tuned for that. So some fashion designers actually sell patterns. So you could go online or contact a fashion designer, however you want to do it, and actually get these patterns and actually use them to cut. Now that is one way. Okay, sorry about that. We went offline once again. My network is awful. So I'm going to give you the pros and cons of learning how to cut using patterns. Now the pro of learning how to cut using patterns is that if you're making ready-to-wear outfits, you are going to get outfits that are consistent. What I mean by consistent is that you're not going to make, if you're making like 10 pieces of a size 10 peplum top, you're not going to get one that the arm is big and the other that the arm is small. Yes, Jay, I'm using 2G. I'm sorry, I'm going to upgrade my SIM to 3G or 5G as the case may be. But right now I'm using a 2G, and I apologize for the break in transmission. Okay, so when you're making a peplum top, for example, and you're making a size 10, you're making 10 pieces, or let me say 12 pieces of a size 10. Now, the one pro of using patterns is that you're going to get outfits that are consistent, okay? So you're going to get an outfit that the neck, like the width of the neck of a top, like one of the size 10 tops, is the same with the other ones. So all the outfits you make would be the same, like exactly the same. You're not worried about, okay, this arm is bigger than the other arm, or this length is longer than the other one. All of them are going to be the same because you use the same measurement, the same standard measurements to cut all of them. So when you actually stitch all of them, when you actually sew all of them, they come out looking exactly the same because you use the same pattern for all of them. Okay, so that is one pro of using patterns. Now the con of using patterns to cut, or learning how to sew or learning how to cut using patterns, the con is that you might get lazy, right? You might get lazy. You might not get creative enough. What I mean is that all you have to do is just go online, get patterns, cut your fabric, and you're done. That's all you need to do. All you need to do is just get your patterns and cut, and that's it. So it stops you from being creative, from thinking out of the box, like thinking, okay, if I don't cut this neck this way, what if I cut the neck in a different way? Will it give me something nice? Do you understand? Like, it stops you from being creative. That's the best way I can explain it. Because all you're worried about is getting patterns to cut, and that's it. On the other hand, you have the option of learning how to cut using freehand. Now, that is the way I learned. And I want to say that another con of learning with patterns is that most times people that learn how to cut using patterns, they find it difficult to cut using freehand. So what I mean by freehand cutting is that you cut without any pattern. You're not looking at any standard measurements. All you have in your mind is the measurement of the person you're trying to make for. Or if you're trying to make for maybe a size 10, you have the measurements in your head or in a piece of paper. And you look at the design that you have to sew, and you simply mark it there and then, and you cut it there and then. Like, you're not using any pattern, you're not using anything, you're just marking and cutting. That is what they call freehand cutting, right? Now, one pro of learning how to cut using freehand is that you are going to be able to cut anything. Like, you don't have to go to anywhere. Like, you don't need to have access to a pattern to cut. Whatever style you think of or you see, you could just look at it. If you think really hard, you're actually going to know how to cut it. If you think really hard, if you look at the style very well, and if it's so difficult, you could ask other people. But if you think deeply, you can actually cut any style with freehand. But as opposed to fashion, what am I saying? As opposed to pattern cutting, that you have to have a pattern to cut. Like, you're depending on this pattern. Now, if the pattern is wrong, then your outfit is going to be wrong at the end of the day. Think about it. If the pattern is wrong, what you're going to make. Freehand cutting, one of the pros of freehand cutting is that you can cut any style as long as you understand it, and as long as it's something that you know you can cut, or you can make. And even if you don't know you can make it, or even if you're not sure you can make it, you can ask other people that are that are better in cutting than you are. Do you get? So that is one pro of using the freehand method. Now, the con of using freehand method is that when you're using freehand, by the time if you're trying to cut like 10 pieces of a size 12 top, because it's freehand and because there's that human error involved, you might actually make a couple of mistakes, especially when you're cutting them over and over and over again like that. You might make a couple of mistakes here and there. What I mean by mistakes, not necessarily mistakes, but what I mean is you might make one neck a bit wider than the other. You might make one arm a bit bigger than the other. So those little errors can actually come into play because you're not using a standard measurement, like a pattern, to cut that particular thing that you're trying to make. Okay, so that's the major difference between pattern drafting, or learning how to cut by pattern drafting, and learning how to cut freehand. Okay, so that's the major difference between those two things. So you have to decide. Ultimately, the decision is yours. The choice is yours, basically, both to learn where to sew or how to sew, and the method of cutting that you decide to employ. Whatever method it is you want to use to cut or learn how to cut or learn how to sew is entirely up to you. And that's why I'm here to simply show you what options you have and the advantages and disadvantages of each of these options. So basically, that's the fourth tip actually. Now that takes me to the fifth tip. The fifth tip is you have to strike a balance between theory and practice. So I mentioned a bit of this in the previous points I made. You have to strike a balance between theory and practice. So like I said, when I learned, I tried to write a whole lot when I was learning, because I learn better when I write. I learn better when I read. So the theoretical part of anything, if I'm trying to learn something, the theoretical part is very important to me. So I tried to, incorporate that into my learning process. So on the other hand, I'm not going to overemphasize on the fact that practical learning is equally as important. Sewing is a practical thing, so you have to actually do it. So it doesn't matter how much you write or how much you draw or how much you sketch, you have to actually get on the sewing machine and actually sew. You get? Yeah. So you have to be able to strike a balance between theory and practice. When I was learning how to sew, like I said, I wrote down a lot of things and I drew a lot of things, and those things helped me to draw. Those things helped me to learn. But when I actually started sewing, like trying to sew for myself and sewing for clients, I didn't use that notebook so much. Like the notebook where I wrote all those things, I didn't use those notebooks too much, because this is the real thing. Like this is the practical aspect. Like you have to learn on the job. You have to, as you're doing it, you're learning. So if, for example, when I was learning how to install a zipper, when I was learning how to install a zipper, I actually wrote down a lot of things, right? When I was watching someone install a zipper, right? I wrote down a lot of things. But when it came to actually installing the zipper, I went through those notes. Those notes were explanatory because they helped me to know, like, they served as a guide basically for me to actually try to install the zipper. But the actual process, the actual sewing process of installing that zipper had to do with practice. Like I needed to have done it a couple of times to really perfect it, right? So that's why I'm saying that it's important to strike a balance between theory and practice. So you have to be sure that, okay, yes, I need to learn, I need to write down things, I need to sketch, I need to draw. All of these things need to come into play. But apart from that, you have to be ready to practice what you've learned. Sewing is impossible unless you practice. Now, even when okay, we're back again. Sorry again for the network issues that I have. So before you actually start taking clients, you start saying, okay, yes, I can make this dress for you. Before you start doing that, please be sure that you know what you're doing, so you don't go ruin someone's fabric. Do you understand? So I had students in the past that they were not even sure what they were doing. They just knew how to do like the basics, right? Yes, Jay, anybody can become a pro if they listen to me. Anybody can become a pro if they listen to me. I'm a fountain of knowledge. Like anybody can become a pro if they listen to me. Okay, thank you. So yeah, like I said, before you actually go out and then start telling everybody you know how to sew, and then they should give you fabrics to make different outfits for them, be sure that you know what you're doing. Don't go ruining someone's fabric. Like it's so painful when you go mess up someone's fabric. So you can start with yourself, start sewing for yourself, then start sewing for your family members. At least if you ruin your brother's or your sister's fabric, they wouldn't be too offended. They would be offended, but they wouldn't be too mad. as opposed to someone that is not related to you and doesn't really care about your feelings. Do you understand? So try to be sure and be confident that you can do these things before you go telling the whole world that you know how to sew. Okay, so yeah, strike a balance between theory and practice. So you know the best way you learn. If you learn better by watching someone do something, then watch a lot of videos. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that you could use to learn different things. My channel, for example, I have a lot of videos for you to learn different things. So yeah, there are a lot of videos that you could watch on YouTube. You could go on Google. You could Google different things you want to learn, different aspects of sewing that you want to learn. You could do that, and that would help you to actually learn faster. So if the option that you chose for to learn how to sew is online, maybe you enrolled in online classes, apart from the videos they're actually sending to you, apart from the videos that your tutor is sending to you for you to use to learn, you can actually go a step further by going online, searching for more videos that you're going to watch, and actually practice these things that you're watching online, both from your tutor and the other videos that you watch from other platforms that you got the videos from. So once you have that done, it will be easier for you to actually learn, and it will make the process of learning faster, and you'll probably spend a lesser time learning than someone else that isn't even trying to do any further research apart from what they're being taught in school. Okay. Now the next step I'll say is practice on your own time. So I already said that in this point I just concluded. Practice on your own time. So find time to actually learn how to sew. Find time to practice these things that you're being taught. That's very, very straightforward. And the next tip is don't be afraid to sew complex styles. This point is very, very interesting. Don't be afraid to sew complex styles. Now, what I would say is, depending on the particular program that you're learning, if I have, like, for example, I teach people how to sew, so I have different courses, right? So depending on what level they are on, I decide, or I tell them, or I suggest to them what particular course they should take. Okay, so for example, for example, this video now is for beginners anyway. So you're a beginner and you want to learn how to sew, right? And then it starts putting you through everything you need to know regarding that course. When you're done learning, like when you've finished learning probably the beginner course, right? You're done with the beginner's course, and then maybe you want to go on to the intermediate course, because I have the beginners, intermediate, and the advanced course. So you want to move on to maybe the intermediate course. I want to say that some beginners are so scared out of their minds to sew a style that is complex. Now, something that is complex can always be broken down into simpler bits. So no matter how complex anything is, you can break it down into bits, into tiny, tiny bits that are easier for you to understand. For example, if you want to sew a gown or a dress that has that has a flare sleeve, right? It's a Princess Darts dress. It has a flare sleeve and it has a half length, right? Now these are different aspects of this final dress you want to make. So you have to understand that you have to break down that complex design into little bits. That is the most important aspect of sewing any style in the world. If you follow this tip, you can sew any style in the whole world. Like, I'm going to explain it further. So like I said, you have a flare sleeve dress that has a princess dart and it has a half length, and then it's a straight gown. So from the half length downwards, it's just a straight gown, right? A pencil gown, for example. Now you have to learn how to cut a pencil skirt. So I have divided my dress into two bits, the top part and the bottom part. I have a video on my channel on how to make a pencil skirt. So if you want to see how to make a pencil skirt, then go on my channel and watch that video. But that's by the way. So you have to learn how to cut a pencil skirt first. That's the first step. Then you have to learn how to cut a princess dart bodice, right? I'm going to upload a video on how to cut a princess dart bodice subsequently. I already have that video recorded on my phone, but I'm going to have to edit it and upload it and all of that. So you have to learn how to cut that princess dart bodice. You have to learn how to cut the pencil skirt. You have to now learn how to cut a basic flare. So I told you that the sleeve is flare. So you have to learn how to cut a basic flare. Okay? Now when you've learned these different bits, you can now put all of these things together to form the style that you have in mind, or that complex style, that seemingly complex style. Once you put all these things together, you can actually make that style. Do you understand what I'm saying? So in cutting, you're going to cut the princess dart separately, princess dart body separately. You're now going to go ahead to cut the pencil skirt part separately, and then you would finally go ahead to cut the flare part separately. Remember, you're going to put a zip in this gown, like a zipper in this gown. You should have already learned how to install a zipper, right? So you see how I've broken down this complex style into tiny bits. Now that is the one way, or the one tip that I use for everything, and it helps me to cut and sew any design. I'm confident I can sew any design. It might take me a longer time because maybe something that is a bit very complex. It might take me a longer time to make, but I'll eventually make it because I have been able to break down this design into tiny bits, and so it's easier for me to now actually make it. So that's one major tip I would say. No matter how complex a design is, break it down into tiny bits, and then you can actually make it together, right? So that's one way to do that. Now the next tip is, the final tip actually, is be patient and don't compare your progress with your colleagues. Be patient and don't compare your progress with your colleagues, right? So, Mommy, I'm recording. My mom is just trying to, steal my shine, but it's not going to work. The final tip is be patient and don't compare. Okay, sorry about that again. The final point is be patient and don't compare your progress with your colleagues. So your colleagues obviously are learning as well, just the same way you're learning. So don't be scared to ask questions if you find anything difficult. And don't compare your progress. Even if both of you started on the same day, like both of you got to the fashion academy or school or whatever, you guys got there the same day, the same time, you started classes the same day, you're doing the same courses, it doesn't matter, right? Because you learn at a different rate from the next person. The next person might learn quicker or faster than you, and that is okay. It doesn't mean you're slow or it doesn't mean you're stupid. It simply means that you have to put in more work. If you find that your colleagues are doing better than you are, faster than you, it means you have to put in more work. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. It doesn't mean that sewing is not for you. It doesn't mean that fashion is not for you. It simply means that you have to put in more work. That's just it. That's just it. It's as simple as that. But then again, it is very scary and very wrong to compare yourself. Try not to compare yourself with any of your colleagues or anybody, because apart from the fact that all of you are in the same class together or in the same place learning how to sew together, remember that these people actually go home and you don't see what they do at home. They could be watching 20 YouTube videos a day on how to make or how to cut and how to sew different things while you're at home sleeping. Like, you don't know what these people are doing in their own time that is making them faster or making them learn this particular thing faster than you're doing. So if you find that everybody else or a couple of people in your class or your colleagues actually learning faster than you, then you have to put in more work. okay? Put in more work. Don't just sit and say, okay, this thing is not for me, I give up and all of that. So that's all I have for you guys today. I decided to go live today because I've never done it before, and it's terrifying to be live because there's no editing, there's no cutting. You're not cutting. This is raw footage, very raw footage, like. But yeah, it's been amazing talking to you guys in real time. So I hope you enjoyed this session. I hope you enjoyed this video. I haven't seen any questions. I haven't gotten any questions yet. The questions I got at the beginning, I answered them, but I haven't gotten any more questions. If you guys have any more questions, you guys should let me know. Like, yeah, I was just trying to check if I have any more questions. There's no question, no question, no question. So thank you guys so much for joining me for this live video session. You can always come back and rewatch this session. You can come back and, you know, go through the points I gave earlier and, you know, take something from it. You know, these are advices or tips from someone. I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes in sewing and cutting and all of that. But I want to believe that I am in a position, in a good position to advise or give you tips as a beginner, and that is why I'm here. If you want to watch more videos from me, definitely subscribe to my channel. Hit the red button down below. I don't want this video to get too long. I don't want it to get way past, and it's already an hour plus. I don't want it to get too long. I thank you guys so much, so very much for watching. I'm so excited that I was able to do this. This was so scary. Thinking about this made me very scary. Jay is asking, is there a fee for learning or is it free? It is not free. No, it's not free. Nothing good is free. Well, not everything. Salvation is free and, you know, it's good. But apart from salvation, good things come with a price, come at a price. So, yeah, salvation wasn't even free anyway. Jesus Christ died and shed his blood for us. So he paid the most expensive price. So no, salvation is not even free. So nothing good is free. Sorry about that, guys. If you want to learn with me, you can leave a comment down below or contact me on Instagram. Send me a DM or something. Just find a way to contact me. Preferably leave a comment down below and I'll respond to you. Okay? Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to run away now because I need to go find out what my mom wants. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. And I'll see you in my next video, which will be on Saturday. I upload videos every Saturday. So if you want to catch me again, then tune into my channel next week, Saturday. I have a no-sew. Oh, thank you, Ian, for tuning in. Thank you, darling. You're welcome. You're welcome. I have a no-sew project already prepared for you guys. I've already recorded the video. I'm just going to edit it. I'm going to schedule it for next week, Saturday. So you're in for a treat, okay? So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week, Saturday. I love you guys so much. Bye.